All right. We are back with another episode of Lost in the Shuffle. Got a special guest today, guys. We got Joey Cunha. What's up, Joey?
What's going on, man? I appreciate you having me on, man.
No problem, Joey. I got your last name right?
Yeah, it's Cunha. Yeah, so it's silent. I always tell people silent H out of Y. Cunha. It's Portuguese, man.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Portuguese. All right, Joey Cunha. So appreciate you stopping by, talking some baseball. We are a sports brand, specifically very heavily invested in baseball. So I came across your TikToks and some of like your social media stuff. Seem like a cool guy. You're out of Vegas, right?
Yeah, born and raised out here in Vegas. Moved away for about 10 years when I went away for college and business and schools. Hopped around from a couple different schools for a little bit. And then, just recently made my way back to Vegas here at the beginning of COVID.
Okay. So for people that don't know, Joey Cunha is the CEO of the Farm System. So Joey, let everybody know, what is the Farm System?
Yeah, no, yeah. Thanks for the question. So Farm System originally started as just a smaller podcast, and it's just me and my co-founder at the time, Bo, was just kind of like we played together in college, and he was like, "Hey, like I think we should start a podcast. I think some people would listen to us." And it started kind of with that. I was assistant baseball coach, high school baseball coach at the time, and so we just started putting out just baseball information, drills, things we've learned over the years, some infield stuff, some outfield stuff, catching, pitching, all these other stuff. We started kind of go around, kind of this more holistic side of just like putting out information about baseball. We then I actually then at that point was shadowing Donnie Ecker, who's now with the Rangers. He's one of their he's their bench coach slash hitting offensive coordinator. Is actually the first role that's been created inside of baseball. It's pretty cool what he's done. But in any case, he was with the Bees, the Salt Lake Bees, the A's with the Angels at the time. And so I started shadowing him. And then not too long after that, I got hired on as the hitting director over at 108 Performance out in California. And so during this time, Farm System, we just kept doing it, kept putting out podcasts, kept having on guests. Again, we started advertising on social media for all these different brands. When it came into the tech side of things, 108 Performance was known as one of the top like hitting facilities in the nation. And with me being the hitting director and with the mentorship of Eugene Bleecker at the time, who had made, big waves inside the space, we started putting out a lot of content, then we ended up coming out with the training product, which is our farm boards that you see quite a bit. It's like these, they look like black mats that are underneath people's feet, now like used by almost every MLB organization. And then also like 100 plus colleges now. So that's starting to spread pretty good now in the last couple of years. And then we came out with courses and, again, now then I ended up coming back to Vegas. We opened up a facility out here in Vegas. And then so we train a whole bunch of guys in here. And then I think we've consulted right around for about half MLB, half the MLB at one point. Again, we've done something for them in the sense of hitting in some category. So so I actually just came back from spring training last week and got to meet with quite a few teams. So that's pretty fun time. I like this time of year.
Yeah, I saw you were out there with a lot of players, getting some good video content and stuff. But as far as the Farm System, like who's your target audience? I mean, are you guys mostly looking for like younger players? You obviously do MLB consulting. So are you strictly, kind of with the big boys, or what does your clientele look like?
Yeah, no, we've kind of really been blessed in that same way. Like for sure, we do age groups. We have 9-year-olds that train with us all the way up to big leaguers. So we train everything in between. And then also, like with that target audience, when it comes to farm, is we actually came out with a docu-series this last year when they actually hit all these different levels as well. So we went 30 different parties. We went from like youth, high school. We went all the way up to, we went up to junior college, Division I, Division II, Division III, Division I softball, junior college, NAIA, pro, businesses in the space, and also to training facilities. So we went through every different level. We interviewed 30 plus parties. Actually was like 50 or 60 different people that were actually in the documentary itself. So we when we come to that, it's like, we hit a lot of different niches of people, but if anything, it's just like people that want to learn about baseball from the training side are I guess you would say slogan is, your home for player development, is we really, with where the company is going in that direction, just educating a lot of people on these things. I always want to connect. I always wanted to connect. I didn't grow up with a lot of money or resources or any of those things. Right. So when we had the vision kind of for Farm System, is like, I wanted to connect. There was this massive gap between experts and like novices or people that are just getting into the sport. Like maybe, like volunteers, probably like you and I had, right? It's like, you're an accountant in the day, or you're the history teacher, and then you come out and coach, baseball, right? Well, like
might have played some college ball or something. Yeah.
100%, right? Maybe I've had plenty of coaches that never played past high school or didn't even play high school or things like that, right? And everybody's just doing their best to get us information. And I saw, as I learned all this information, there was so many things that were being taught at the youth level that were just leading people astray. And then we have to fix when they get older. And so I was like, man, like I want to close that gap in between, that expert and then, someone that's a volunteer in the game, and, get those as close as possible. And how do we get that information from one to the other? And so, when I was younger, I didn't have, I actually found an academy when I was a sophomore in high school, and my family didn't have a lot of money. I went in there and I got one lesson from Mike Easler, the Hitman. I don't know if you remember him back in the day, but he played like 17 years in the big leagues. Like if you could think about him like as a modern day player, he'd have been someone like Prince Fielder or something like that, like a dangerous guy that hit a lot of home runs, but he played for Boston for many years. And then also went on to be a hitting coach for, I think, like 15 years in the big leagues. Had Albert Pujols, like his rookie season, he also had Matt Kemp in Double-A, and then he was like Mo Vaughn's like main guy in Boston. And so anyways, yeah. So we used to have, I used to be at the academy. So I went there, we did one lesson, and I'm like, dude, I can't afford to do this again. And I realized how much I need this. And so I just went to the owner and I'm like, hey man, Andy Concepcion at the time, who's actually a local high school baseball coach here in Vegas, and that's still. And I just said, hey man, like I'll catch all of your lessons. I'll clean the bathrooms. I'll do whatever I can do. Just let me hang out, And so I did that. I cleaned bathrooms. I caught every bullpen they had. I did all those things, ran summer camps for them. And then again, Mike had, Frank Thomas and Canseco and these guys constantly coming in. And I got to spend a lot of time with Canseco and, learning. He talked about hitting so different than anybody had ever talked about hitting in my life.
Good or bad?
So, yeah, it's just a very different perspective on how to hit. And obviously he's a different guy in general, but it was just again, kind of coming up through that landscape is I just had these old school roots. And then I learned all these, again, with tech and all the advancements there and how open I was to learning new information and wanting to know information, again, and again, especially linking up at 108 Performance out in California, like that skyrocketed my career probably 10 years just by the information gap that I learned from how many things I was teaching wrong and how many hitters, like things I was wrong about. And so, that was a big piece. And so that was like really the vision for Farm. And it continues to be as we continue to grow is, connecting that expert level kind of with these volunteers and how do we get them this information and really close that gap.
So how long have you guys been around for the company? When was this founded?
Yeah. So we are now I think we just passed our 4th anniversary, our 4th year. So we're almost past one of the biggest stats I always tell the guys is like, hey, 90% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. We're almost past the first, 5 years. We'll get past the first 90% and I'll feel good. So, we're making that thing. We're about 4 years in though. Yeah.
Beautiful. So in regards to the last 4 years, obviously, I've started this brand. I'm trying to grow, and there's a lot of, hurdles, especially when you're doing things by yourself. But then there's also a lot of great things, things that get me excited or, just that kind of keep you going. So what is like your biggest milestone that you guys have had thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of crazy. Even this last week when I was in spring training, I think when you're working and you're in the pit, right? You're grinding, right? You're in there with players and we're putting out content. We're doing all these things. We're putting things out and you can feel like nothing's moving. Right. And for me, when I'm like, again, I'm spiritually, like me with God, like that's a big motivator for me of like how I want to treat people. And like also too, what keeps me refreshed and my cup filled every day. So that's like a big thing for me there. And so one of the things is like, that keeps me motivated kind of on a daily basis of like, how I want to, serve, and how, again, refreshing me of like why I do what I do. And then also
like your
I think,
purpose, right? Fulfilling your purpose.
yeah, and feeling like this is exactly what I was built to do. This is
Mhm.
like exactly every
Your
moment early in
calling.
my life set me up to do what I do now. And
Mhm.
so that was so big. And I think the biggest like milestone, probably, it's so funny you asked that, is probably last week when I was in spring training. Is when I was at spring training, I was with an organization. I was meeting with a farm director for a particular organization. And I didn't think that he knew who I was. And so I was just like, oh, hey, like we were supposed to interview together, like 2 years ago. And he's like, oh, no, like I know who you are, like, blah, blah, blah. And we started having this conversation. I'm like, all right, cool. Like I know a lot of, farm directors and hitting coordinators. And like, it was actually a cool thing knowing when I went out there this year, I was looking at the roster of every team that's going to be in spring training in Arizona this year. And every team, I think, except for one, I knew the hitting coordinator or somebody in the major league staff on that team. And so that's why I went out there for 3 days and I connected with like 7 organizations. And
Mhm.
so the breakthrough kind of there for me was when we left the room after meeting that farm director, just an offhand remark by this one of the hitting directors was just like, he just said, oh yeah, like we talked about you quite a bit when we were going to hire a big league hitting coach this last offseason. Like you were on our top 20 list. And I was like, oh, like, like that was over. Like, again, not
I
something
didn't
that,
know I
again,
applied for that, right?
yeah, like, yeah. And even with that, a lot of times in those for roles like that, they already have somebody in mind of, who they're going to grab and who would be their most, okay, hey, who do we think fits this role the most? And who do we want to go and like headhunt, to go grab these roles? And I was probably number 20 and probably would have done a terrible job, but it's always great to be considered, again, for these roles, especially like at my age, to do those and some of the things that we've been able to do as a company in that short-term and time, short period of time. So I think that was really eye-opening for me, and just a grateful like moment of just saying like, wow, like it's cool to be, acknowledged in that way. And that, some people think of me that way. So that's really cool. So
Yeah, getting recognition from your peers and being
yep.
considered for a highly touted position like that. So that's awesome. I mean, that just came recently too. So
yeah,
four,
you're the
four
first
years
person,
into
an exclusive for you. I didn't even, the public doesn't, I've never even talked about that yet. So there you go, exclusive. Just
heard
for
it here
you.
first, guys.
Yeah, I heard it here first.
Switching gears a little bit, I just want to know, give me 1, 2 bold predictions for the upcoming MLB season.
Ooh, bold predictions.
It could be someone surprising a division, a breakout
Yeah.
player.
Yeah. I just because we and I guess I would say the first thing is I think that's probably going to happen is, and I'm just a little bit more intermeshed with this. The first thing that came to my mind is we've done some training with Tommy Pham with the Reds. So just because I've been in that mix and seeing how they're kind of putting their team together and those things, I think that they're going to end up trading Joey Votto and Tommy Pham. I would see that happening, not because like, Tommy or Joey would want to move or any of those things, but I just see how they're putting their team together. And it seems like they're in this like rebuild. And again, like obviously like Votto's worth something to a playoff team right now. Like Pham
Right.
is worth something to a playoff team right now. And those are 2 bigger names that they can, organizations tend to get rid of those guys late in their career to pick up prospects and to pick up these guys to rebuild their teams. And so I could see the Reds really doing that. And like, again, trading Joey Votto and, Pham that late in the year. And again, especially if they're both having good seasons. And I saw Votto in spring training and looks pretty good again. And, I think he's going to do pretty good. And Pham's made some good adjustments this offseason too. So we'll see how he bounces back. But yeah, I could see them trading those guys late to somebody late in the season. So,
I mean, they've dumped their whole team anyway, right? They got Eugenio Suarez, Jesse Winker. So they've been dumping players already.
Yep. They got rid of Castellanos. Like you get like, again, like that team could be right now, if they would have kept it could be really stacked. Like they could have had a nasty team together. So it seems like they were already going that direction. And again, obviously, when you get on the business end of like, how my guys' contracts are, can they actually afford all those guys on the team at the same time and all of those things? That's a whole nother story. But yeah, like you said, they've, kind of how they put the team together. You could see that really being a possibility that they end up offloading those guys later in the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
In regards to young players, in regards to young entrepreneurs? Obviously, like you said, you're trying to close the gap with more senior players, younger players. You've obviously started this business yourself. Give me some advice that you would either give young players that are trying to kind of refine their game, or maybe some young entrepreneurs that are starting a new venture and kind of feel lost and maybe need some encouragement or some sage advice from someone who's already in year 4.
Yeah, no, that you hit on my two passions, baseball and business. Those are my, I love baseball and I love business. Yeah. So, actually one thing, just to give some context here. So I was before I came back to baseball, when I got my last couple years of playing, of playing were just plagued with injuries. Again, also like setbacks. Like, again, for example, like it was like my dream to play Division I, right? Like it was my dream. I wanted to play Division I so bad. And so many people, again, I was just telling the story a minute ago about being in a dugout when I was younger. And one of my coaches, I came in the dugout, I struck out. I like was very fiery as a player, and I took my helmet off, and I think I like tossed it into to the thing. I was being a bad teammate. And one of my assistant coaches said something to me, and I like fired back, I said something about like, me wanting to be a Division I baseball player, and I can't be having at bats like that. And And he was like, you're never going to be a Division I baseball player. And I was like, like it's just like, no, like I'm going to be the Division I baseball player. So when I achieved that and actually signed, when I played at University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, so I got to sign out like, a mid-major in the SWAC, right? A HBCU. I got to go play for, and I got there. I'm like, okay, I'm going to play. And then the NCAA came in and hit us with some regulations from our football team, like 150 illegal food plans or something like that. We were back to back conference champs. They banned us from playoffs. They cut our scholarships. They did all these things, right? And so that was like, and then also too, while I was trying to make the team at that time, I ended up tearing my shoulder at the time, and I didn't know it was torn. And I was like, trying to make the squad. I was trying to play third base, and I was our setup guy, and I was a two-way player. And so, in this, right, like I think my life, again, like I said, when I grew up, like I didn't have a lot of money. Like I was kind of built on adversity after adversity after adversity after adversity, and like overcoming these things, and people telling me I couldn't do this and I wouldn't do that. And so that was kind of being my storyline. And then with the injuries and all these things, some of these things were, self-done as well, because I just trained so hard all the time. Like I always was the overworker. I was
recovery wasn't a thing.
Yeah. Overuse injuries constantly. I'd be running sprints at 2 a.m. at parks. Like I could tell you what time the sprinklers came on at any park here locally in Vegas. Like, I was that guy. Even
Psycho Joey, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had a crazy, like people had a weird perception of me when I used to play. Cause it was like, I came off, which I was like, I was a try hard. Like I did everything I could to, get there. I mean, I remember guys going home at 2 a.m. in junior college, coming back from a party or something like that. And they're like, dude, did I just see you in the street? Like, I remember text messages. I was like, one of my ex-girlfriends at the time had texted me, and she was like, were you just running like sprints in the street? It's like 2 a.m. And I'm like, I was obsessed with achieving what I wanted to achieve. And so, again, to channel that back into, baseball is what some people miss within that story is when I was done with baseball, which I still have a year of eligibility in AIA. If I ever want to go back and play
in your back pocket, season, right?
40 years old, I'm making a comeback. We're going to, document the whole thing. But in any case, I got offered the GM position at Planet Fitness. And I was interning with them at the time for school. I was a sports management, exercise science major. And so I got an internship with them, and then I ended up becoming a regional manager for them. And then I got promoted again, and I was the second most profitable region in the world. I was the regional, right? And I'm like, man, like I excelled really quickly. I was the first one in the company to be a regional. I was a regional within like 6 months of being with the company. Like I skyrocketed through the system. And, with that, I just took all of the things I took from sports, right? Like it was just transferred to me. It was like getting a whole group of people to run the same direction was leadership. I had been, I didn't always start all my teams as team captain, but I had been team captain on almost every team I've been on in my entire life. So it was just like, I might have my first 2 years, maybe I was young. Okay. My junior, senior year, I'm like captain on the team. Right. So like, again, I took a lot of those skills and then brought them over into business. And so, but for those 2 years that I was the regional at Planet Fitness, I watched zero baseball. I wanted nothing to do with baseball because I was like burnt out, right? Like I had trained so hard for, 20 years of my life, right? To be, to play the game. And my last couple of years were just like train, never get to play. Train, never get to play, right? And so like I was just like kind of mad at the game and I needed to get away. And then I needed to come back. And so then after the 2 years, I actually, made some bigger jumps to get back into baseball and took some real big risks to get back into baseball from doing that, and so crazy story, but like, again, like I was supposed to be a director at Planet Fitness, like everything was going really well. I had 6 facilities, like, multi-million-dollar facilities, like, where I'm just keep getting elevated all the way. And that same guy, Andy Concepcion, he moved to Utah and took over a high school baseball team. And a year prior, he had texted me and said, "Hey man, I'm starting a high school team. Could you come be my assistant coach?" And I'm like, dude, high school baseball coaches make nothing. Assistant high school baseball coaches make absolutely nothing. And I'm about to be a director, like over here in Planet Fitness out in like Texas at the time. I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to go take this job in Utah. So a year later, I hit him up and I'm like, "Hey man, you remember that job you offered me? Like I would love, like I would want to take that job and I don't have any money put away. I was young. I was blowing my cash like crazy. Like I was wearing suits every day and like had a Mustang and stayed in this nice apartment in Austin, Texas, and all these things that I think were like check marks early in my life that if I do these things, this means I'm successful." And so, when I came to like the end of myself there and really, again, like with me, like having a lot of these conversations with God and just being like, hey, like this isn't fulfilling me. I feel like I'm running in circles here, chasing my tail. And so, I prayed about it a ton and, he opened some, my eyes to a lot of things and I ended up making that jump. And then I went there and I was, again, to inspire anybody, because somebody's probably here right now is, man, I was waking up at 4 a.m. every day, driving Uber, living at his house in his basement, the coach's house in his basement with his family upstairs and all those things. So that traded my Mustang in, went to another car so I could drive Uber. I would drive from 4 a.m. every day till like 12, eat lunch, get ready for practice, do practice, get the field all done, come back home at like 10 o'clock at night, wake up at 4 a.m. and do it all again. And while I was also building Farm System at the same time, right? And so I was just grinding and just, I didn't know where it was going to lead. God said, run this direction. And I had no idea. Like there was no promises of like, okay, if you do this, then this is gonna, it was just, hey, you trust me, like go this way. And so, I just started going that way and just learning and listening. And then also too, applying those business skills that I learned. If I wouldn't have went to Planet Fitness and learned all that, and if I wouldn't have been at the academy when I was younger and learned marketing and like how to run facilities and, just all of that business side, all of that fed into, again, us going into a business. And there's been so many people along the way. I think one of the biggest things is like when you don't see, you don't see a way, like, just because it seems impossible, all these things, like God will make a way. Like God, he'll open a door that you don't see. Like, he'll again, if he tells you to go this way and he tells you to, like, he'll open a door that you thought no way. That's just like, again, like and even Farm System, right? Like I got offered when I was at 108, I got offered a job by the hitting director with the Cubs at the time to come out and run his facility.
That's my team.
Hey, I was just out there, man. But no, yeah, like so the Cubs at the time, they hired Justin Stone, who's their hitting coordinator. Me and him are really good friends, or their hitting director, sorry. And he's got this new job. I interviewed for the hitting coordinator role. And when I was interviewing with them, he circled back a couple weeks later and was like, hey, as the Cubs, we decided that this year I'm going to be the hitting director and the hitting coordinator. And then next year we're going to hire a hitting coordinator. But what I want in the meantime is I want to hire you to be our hitting director at our facility, because he has a facility out in Chicago. That's one of the biggest, I think, if not the biggest hitting facility in all of the United States, right? At least, not the world. And he's a massive facility that he has. And so he's like, I want you to be our hitting director and then consult for the Cubs. And then next year, we're going to bring you in as our hitting coordinator. That would be the succession plan. And I'm like, okay. So, and then also I'm going to double your salary from 108. Right. And I'm like, all right, it's been great over here. It's been fun. I'm moving forward. Right. So, I prepared 108 for like 4 months for me to leave. And then, right as I went to transition, COVID hit. Bam. Okay. So right back to my story, right? Adversity, like all these things, injuries, things prolonging what I thought I was going to have to go do. And so, he's like, man, I'm laying off people that I've had for, 20 years. I created a role for you. Like you're a new role I was bringing into my company. I just can't bring you on right now. And then 108, I had prepared for 4 months for me to leave. So now I'm stuck in between both positions. And then, everybody on the news is like, hey, 2 weeks, right? Like 2 weeks, everything will be good. So then I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go back to Vegas for 2 weeks where I'm, born and raised. My family's here, my nephews, my niece, right? Like everybody's here. And then I'll move to Chicago, right? 2 weeks from now, a month from now, I'll just move to Chicago. Well, 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, right?
You know how that went,
yeah, it just keeps going, right? So craziest story, and this is what I mean, and I hope this inspires somebody, is that like, what am I to do now, right? Like Major League Baseball, like, okay, they only have low-level positions that are available. Like I'd be taking a massive pay cut to like go and take one of those roles. And again, it would be, again, almost like selling yourself for a smaller role. And then also too, the two facilities that I'd work at, like I can't go to either one of them right now. Right. And then I'm like, all right, so in the meantime, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to train players. Right. So I was training players here. We started training players remotely, like through Zooms like this, with the guy one-on-one, and we're having this conversation, and I'm like, hey, and giving them correctives. And I got this random message. From a guy on Twitter. He had no picture, like 10 followers. And he sends me a DM and he's like, hey, would you mind training my son? And I'm like, yeah, like, I'm like, it's during COVID. Like I need money. Like, what I'm saying? Like I'll train the kid. Yeah. So I start training his son, and they're like hitting in a barn. And I'm like, oh, like, what do you do? And he's like, oh, like, I'm a 6th generation farmer. I have like, 30 other businesses, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like I grew up in Vegas with a lot of people that, had, status or money, those things, like all those things. I'm like, I've trained a lot of players that, parents do a lot of successful things. And so I was like, oh yeah, cool. So, I keep just training this kid. And then he's like, hey, so tell me more about the farm. Let's talk about the farm. And so we started talking more, building this relationship. And he actually offered to be my investor like 3 different times. And I was like, nope. Like, I don't want anybody inside the business. Like I like this part of the business. I like to be able to, I want to run it. I don't want someone telling me, how to run this business and be underneath, like, working for somebody else. Like this is my hobby. This is my thing, And so finally we built enough of a relationship, and I trusted him enough. And then boom, we, let him in as an investor. And then, then we got the building, and then we put out a docuseries. Then we started hiring all these employees, and we started, we started doing all of these different things. And I'm like, again, another way of being like, when you don't think there's a way, and it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do, is like, God just opened a door and was like, hey, I know that you haven't seen this, and this is like a hidden door right here that I have for you. And like, open it up. And all of a sudden there was a way. And, again, if I wouldn't have done all the things I did in the meantime, or if I needed to see where we were going before I moved, or if I needed to know all those things, like I needed to move, I needed to take steps. It's, God was at the corner going like, hey, come this way. I know you can't see, but I need you to trust me. I know you can't
that's
see.
That's what faith is, right?
Yeah. 100%. The difference between, me needing to know and walking in faith rather than sight. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that was a big thing. So I would say, with that is the biggest message I can give to not only a younger player, right, that doesn't see there's a way, right? Like there's no way. Like if you would have told me I was going to be a Division I baseball player, right? Or again, that even when I transferred in, was my NAI that I played for, Sterling College, they were better than my Division I. They would have kicked my Division I's butt. Like we would have got destroyed by them, right? And we ended up going to the World Series. We're 5th in the nation, all these cool things, and I had all these experiences. But like, if you would have told me, I was just thinking about this the other day. I pull into the parking lot, I park my car, and I'm looking at the logo on the door, and I'm like, man, like, wow, like, you know, how
far
far
you've come, right?
you know, things have come, and like how I had little pieces of how, you know, I had little pieces of effort and little bits of faith, but like how much God had moved and made all these things happen and moved these pieces. And so, yeah, that was like, you know, the piece for me is just like, man, just have faith, walk forward in faith, trust that, you know, whatever is going to happen is meant to happen. Sometimes people fail 5 businesses before their 6th business blows up, and do what you're passionate about. You can't, building a business is too hard if you don't love it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't love the journey and you're just waiting for destinations and you're waiting for hits and you're waiting for those little moments, and you don't love all the moments in between, and you don't love the ups and downs and the problem solving and all those things, like, it's a tough road. You know, it's a tough road to be able to do that. And so, you know, I hope that in that same way, and, you know, we're still moving, we're still doing a lot of things. I hope that continues to, as well as, like, you know, I wasn't born with a whole bunch of status or money and all these other things. And like, now I'm being considered for MLB organizations, like, you know, head hitting jobs. Like, it's crazy. You know, again, like, I would have never believed that if you'd have told me that when I was younger. It was impossible, you know? So,
Well, it's hard to beat someone when someone has passion, right? It's hard to beat people that are very passionate. And I saw a video like that today that you just mentioned, is you need to love the journey and not the destination, because those milestones will begin to just happen. When you love something and you're going after something, just along the way, that will just naturally occur.
yeah, well said. Yeah. My friend over with my friend Evan Wise, he says his last name's Wise because he says some wise stuff every once in a while. But he says, you know, the destination is the disease, the journey is the reward. You know, and when you fall in love with the destination, and like when you're getting there, like, okay, once I get here, I'll be happy, right? There's that famous like Adam Sandler skit where he talks about like, okay, like if you go to Paris, right? Like if you're not happy in America and you go to Paris, you're still not going to be happy, right? And so like, understanding that that's like an inside job, and again, inside self-love thing that you have to learn how to do. And so, you know, again, like, you know, I always, you know, talk about this as being like, you know, the business is always growing, or what, it doesn't have to be the business. It's whatever you do, right? It's whatever your thing is, you put all this time into doing it, right? And you think that you're building it, but meanwhile, God is using it to build you, you know? And so I've learned so much awareness, and I've grown so much as a man, and so much as, you know, my faith and all those things from the business, you know? And meanwhile, I'm trying to build the business, and it's teaching me all of these lessons, you know, along the way. And I think that's just so important, is to fall in love with the day to day, and fall in love with the relationships that you're building along the way, and fall in love with training your players, or having, again, for you podcast wise, right? And fall in love with, like, you know, talking with your guests and telling stories, and, you know, and bringing all these things to light. It's like, if you can fall in love with that, it's like, man, like you're going to be a hard runner, you know, and you're going to do some really, you know, powerful stuff.
Yeah. So, Joey, I know obviously you have a good social media presence. This is I found that social media, I mean, I've started to gain a following just from putting out, you know, funny videos.
Yeah.
So what has social media done for you and your business? How has it changed? And kind of like, what's your approach to, you know, your TikToks, your Instagrams, Twitters, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, asking some good questions. I also like this too, because a lot of times too, I end up people end up asking me just a whole bunch of just purely baseball questions, and I'm like, man, I love business too.
Yeah.
Ask me about business. So yeah, so that's cool. Yeah, so put it this way: if we didn't have social media, I wouldn't have a business. Like our whole business was built from social media. Like, again, that's the reason. It's like back in the day, it was impossible for me to be considered a top level hitting coach, because if you didn't play Major League Baseball, and if you didn't have all these major league experience, then there's no way you can get these jobs. Now you got guys like Rob Van Soyoc with the Dodgers, right? Like I don't think he played. I think he might've tried to walk on at a JUCO or something like that. And like, you know, like even then, like, you know, again, and he's a major league hitting coach, and he's like one of the best in all of baseball. Right. And then you have guys that only played at the minor leagues, or you have, you know, Justin Stone, right? Like Justin Stone didn't play Major League Baseball, right? And he's the hitting director for the Cubs, right? And so, you know, you have all this, and it's a blending of all of these pieces. And so, social media is a crazy way to reach a lot of people, and also too to really spread messages. And when you, it's one of the, you know, most powerful marketing platforms that you can use, especially right now. I was looking at, you know, again, what you've done on TikTok to this point too, and comparatively, like we just started kind of making a push on TikTok of late. But like TikToks and Reels are like crazy right now. Like you can get so many views. Like we posted two videos. In the last like probably 2 months that have gone over like, like 3 million views. Like that's crazy. Like, again, right now, if I post something even on Twitter, even though with the following I have on Twitter, like I might get, a couple thousand views. I've even had videos that blew up and I got, 40,000, 90,000 views. Well, now I can get 90,000 views on a reel. That's just like a random video. That's not even, it's a crazy how much reach you can get now from social media from that side. So, strategy standpoint, I think it's a little bit of mix. I always say like the best teachers find a way to make it entertaining, right? So like when I teach and I'm doing things on social media, I also have this like, I'm sure you've seen it. Like I have this like fiery, chippy, like, I got this like chip on my shoulder. Like I always
energy.
Yeah. I got this. I'm always down to debate with somebody and like, go the rounds and do those things. And that's like something that's in my personality. For good or for worse, sometimes for sure. But with that, like, I'm always, again, like with it, it's like, I realized more than anything on social media, I realized that most fans have only seen like full swings from hitters, like hitting in a game, a double, a home run, but they don't see the whole behind the curtain, like what all these guys do to be able to perform on TV. They don't just go and hit front toss and, BP, and then all of a sudden they're Mike Trout. Right. That's not how that works. Right. And there's so many things that they're working on behind the scene that deserves respect and like understanding who they are as like a person and like all those things that happen behind the scenes. So we try to capture, I almost say it's like, I realized this last year that everybody just sees the haircut when it's done and nobody sees the haircut when you're cutting it. And so like if you were to walk in the middle of a haircut, you'd be like, that's an ugly haircut. That's terrible. Like, why would you ever cut somebody's hair like that? And then you get to the end of the haircut, you're like, oh, pretty nice. Like the guy's got I like how that turned out.
Yeah, but I got one today too.
100%. Right. So I think that's a big deal. Is like, if you ever walk in the middle of a haircut, like I know people that don't even want to look in the mirror while they're getting their haircut because, they can't handle looking at themselves in the middle of a haircut. Right. And so I think that's the same thing as like when we're doing swings and doing that with people, we try to make that connection with, there's a lot of different things we try to hit on when it comes into like education, entertainment. And I think in this day and age and just in general, more people want to be entertained than they want to be educated. Right. Yeah. And education is still a big tier, but entertainment definitely will always grab the most eyes. So we do a little bit of mixture of that. And then also obviously marketing, products and things like that, again, and like what that could do for your players and things like that. We put out things like that as well. But more than anything, I think we focus on entertainment and education and try to blend the two where like when people are learning, it's like fun, engaging. I was watching one of my videos the other day and I was sitting there watching it and going like, man, if I was a young kid and I was looking at this, like how cool this would have been when I was growing up, that I could just watch somebody like this, like work through their stuff. And I had a connection like that. So
I'm sure that helps a lot of coaches too, like young coaches that maybe don't have the experience or the knowledge that you have, and they can come to a page like yours and see drills and the thought process behind these, these things that they can bring over to their practice and say, hey guys, we're going to start doing this. So like the span and the eyes that you have on you affects so many others, like these at their practices and things like that for people who don't exactly know as much as you do.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why we even do like, we do with these like hit with me sessions, and we've been uploading more of them to YouTube and some of those things as well, which is like, kind of like if you were to go on YouTube right now and look up like a yoga routine, right? Like very easy to find. There's a billion on there, right? You could go do a whole yoga routine. Well, I started thinking about that, like a hitting routine, like if you're a kid and you're trying to connect this, or how do I bring this over to practice? And we get those questions all the time. Like, how do I bring this over to practice? Well, I started doing like these sessions where I started calling them hit with me, right? Like just hit with me. And like, let's go through a hitting session. I'm going to tell you again, this may be for you, this may not be for you, but like, see how I again, put together like a hitting plan and I might be, walking through. And then, then I started having high school coaches and stuff hit me up and go, hey, like I did your hit with me at my practice, right? Like that's what we did today. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like cool. Like, again, I'm happy I can do something that you could apply. And so that was more of a bigger piece, like when we try to do things, and we're working on a couple different things right now. We have courses and all these other places that we do inside of our, we have a membership platform that's called Farm Plus, where we go inside and we show drills and we show like behind the scenes, like nuggets from when we're training players. And we have all of our courses on there, and we have, we go into a lot of different things like presentations that I've given, and all of that stuff's all interactive. Then our docu-series, like everything's on there. We got another docu-series that we're going to be starting here very soon. Again, that's an exclusive. Nobody knows that but you, like just dropping it here with you. And then also, we're working on these other things to connect with coaches right now, of being like, okay, how do I connect this to my practice? And then how do I know how to bucket my guys so I can actually make some of these changes that you're getting, from with your players. So we're working on some of those things right now as well. And all of that, again, we're trying to build that around that membership platform, and, really, connect and kind of close that gap. Like I mentioned in the very beginning, I keep finding more and more ways to try to close that gap.
Right. All right, Joey. Well, let everybody know where they can find you. Your handles. What social media can they find you if they're interested, maybe in Farm Plus? Where can they sign up for that? So plug everything you got.
Cool. Yeah. Now the plugs. I appreciate it. So you can follow me at _Joey Cunha. It's just my name. I'm on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. We're all those places. And then also too, the farm system, at the farm system. Again, just like the minor leagues in baseball, right? That's our company. Check us out there. We're also always posting a ton of stuff of those nuggets and things like that we give away a bunch of stuff for free on social media, just a whole bunch of, nuggets and things that people have taken. And then Farm Plus, if you guys want to get the Farm Plus, our docu-series, or any of our resources, our training tools like our farm boards, or our training insoles that show pressure in real time in organizations. Again, right now, major league organizations are really getting on. All of that is in links in all of our bios, right? You just hit the link in the bio and it'll take you to all the things that we offer. We do a bunch of fly-ins. Like we have a bunch of international clients that fly in here to Vegas. We're in Las Vegas, so 2 blocks south of the airport. All these guys, again, come in. We also have training clients here in Vegas that come consistently. And then we also have remote training options that we do with, a broad array of players across the country and internationally. And so, all of that can be found in our links in our bios, and you guys can definitely check that out there.
Awesome. Joey, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the insight and the stories. And everybody, please go and check him out. Give him a follow. Baseball fans, you get a lot of good material and knowledge following him. So, Joey, thanks again. I hope you had a good time, and we'll definitely be watching you this upcoming season and constantly supporting you as well.
No, I love it, man. I appreciate it. Thank you again for having me on. Always honored when somebody asks. It's a privilege for sure.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we will see you next time. Lost in the Shuffle.